Our presentation was titled "A Series of Conditional Discriminations and Evaluation of Transformation of Stimulus Function" by Megan Faltz, Renee Rios, Tanya Stokeland, Hank Webb, and Haley Williams.
So there are actually a lot of different types of relational frames. We gave a couple different examples of mutual entailment, combinatorial entailment. The one that was primarily used in the study was the relational frame of comparison, which relates responding in terms of being more than or less than in comparison to another stimulus. And these relations are able to build upon one another and patterns begin to emerge. The example we used was with amounts of money being more than or less than. And once these patterns can be brought under the control of contextual cues, where the responding is under the control of those words bigger than or smaller than, this is known as arbitrarily applicable responding. So finally, I want to talk a little bit about the purpose of this study. We talked about how children with pervasive developmental disorders commonly experience verbal delay and language deficits, and those deficits can be met using things such as multiple exemplar training, which uses relational responding with the use of reinforcement to produce generalized answers with one specific stimuli. It's also very effective for training novel stimuli. In this study, we focused more on the transformation of stimulus. Basically, we wanted to show how that transformation task could demonstrate the ability for a new stimulus function to influence other behavior. And in this way, we're able to demonstrate that those relations were developing and that they were allowing for generalization of language.
The participants in this current study were 3 children, all diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. They were 3 males, aging 9, 10, and 11. The setting for the study was in the participants' homes, and there was always an investigator there with them. The design was a multiple baseline, and the instrument used was the Visual Basics Express 2008 edition. Data collection was instantaneously collected by the Visual Basics program, in which the data was instantly put into a notepad on the computer. The independent variable of the study was the conditional discrimination training of the comparisons of more than and less than frames. The dependent variables were the percentage of correct responding during training and testing phases and the percentage of correct responding in the transformation of stimulus function test. There were several conditions within the experiment. The pretest condition, the participant, if they scored 79 or less on the pretest, they moved into the conditional discrimination training phase. If they scored above 79, they were released from the study. There was a match to sample training condition phase where arbitrary contextual cues of 3 capital A's and 3 capital D's were paired with less than and more than contextual cues. And there was verbal praise for correct responding. We had another phase, which was the testing of the derived relations, and there were no consequences for correct or incorrect responding. The transformation of stimulus function task was to see if, within the presence of the contextual cues and under novel stimuli, would the function transform. There was no consequence for correct or incorrect responding.
We trained relational frames of comparison for more than, less than, and we trained A1 more than to B1 expensive, A2 less than to B2 cheap, A1 more than to C1 quarter, A2 less than to C2 penny, A1 more than to D1 bag candy, and A2 less than, and D2, which is 1 M&M. We used a random numbers generator to present the sample stimuli and the response stimuli, and then we also used a arbitrary contextual stimuli, AAA being representative of less than, and ZZZ being representative of more than. This was one of our kiddos. We did use response blocking with him because he was trying to press the buttons as quickly as possible to get through the program, and we also used verbal praise for reinforcement for correct responding.
Good job! Good job! Hershey Kisses are more than. Which one's more than? The M&M or the Hershey Kisses?
M&M?
Which one's less than? The Hershey Kisses or the M&M?
Hershey Kisses.
Okay, which one's more then? The Hershey Kisses or the M&M?
M&M.
Which one's more then?
Hershey Kisses.
Hershey Kisses. Good job. Hershey Kisses are more then. Hold on. Yep. Which one's less than? M&M or Hershey Kisses?
M&M.
Okay, push it. Good job. The Hershey Kisses are less than. Which one's more then? Hershey Kisses or M&M?
Hershey Kisses.
Awesome! High five! Hershey Kisses are more then.
Okay, so testing for derived relations, we tested B1 expensive to C1 quarter, B2 cheap to C2 penny, C1 quarter to D1 berry candy, C2 penny to D2 just one M&M, B1 expensive to D1 berry candy, and B2 cheap to D2, which was one M&M. And then the transformation task, basically the purpose for us was to see if the more than less than relations could transform into better or worse, such as quality of choice. So we used the contextual stimuli. So AAA was for the crappy toy train, and then the ZZZ was for the awesome, cool bouncy castle. And also we didn't use any consequence for correct or incorrect responding.
As you can see here, each participant was able to make it through each training phase within 2 or 3 attempts before moving on to the next training phase. Ultimately, in the end, the results show that each was able to make their 80% criterion during the testing phase, with the exception of participant 1, who only made it to 70% on the more than training.
Discussion. In our current study, 3 children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder were able to develop relational frames, which combined formed generalized verbal operant classes that consisted of mutual entailment, combinational entailment, and transfer or transformation of stimulus functions. As demonstrated by the results, conditional discrimination were successfully trained in all 3 students using a match-to-sample training method. There are several limitations to our current study. One such limitation is that the experimental design that was implemented was a non-congruent multiple baseline design, allowing for maturation or history effects to influence the participants' responses. One way to overcome this limitation would be to implement a concurrent multiple baseline design in which all data are recorded simultaneously in order to achieve a greater degree of control. CAR 2005. A second limitation is that the possibility of a pre-existing bias toward particular stimuli presented in the training phases cannot be ruled out. Further, the lack of a reinforcer assessment and testing in our current study could explain the participants' initial indifference to their responses to the program. Although the results in our current study are interesting, there are several aspects worthy of further investigation. Specifically, there is a need for more research investigating the discriminative abilities of different populations, since it is possible that some individuals may not respond well to computer screen representation of objects. Not responding well to two-dimensional objects on a computer screen can be similar to the problem some individuals have with not responding appropriately to pictures of objects as opposed to the real objects. Dixon, 1981, Dixon and Dixon, 1978. Finally, future studies may seek to create developmentally appropriate computer or tablet game applications in which learning may occur to a greater extent by introducing various play tasks, which may teach children with disabilities to respond by relating various stimuli and then generalizing these established relations to other stimuli within the game application.